Hey guys, I'm Bill Jones, head instructor of top level martial arts in beautiful downtown Cuyahoga Falls, co host of Black Belt Tips, the podcast, and a black belt under Master Pedro Hour. I wanted to come at you today because I saw a question in the group earlier this week, and it was basically how do I balance CrossFit and Jiu Jitsu training? And a lot of people gave terrible answers, just talking about just bashing CrossFit and all that. And I thought that was just a terrible way to treat somebody. So I wanted to come at you and give you some real advice from someone who's been there and done that. This is for Brian Rogers. So Brian, whether it's CrossFit and Jiu-Jitsu, whether it's train building in Jiu-Jitsu, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons in Jiu-Jitsu, whatever your hobbies are, the first thing you need to do is decide if those things are going to conflict with one another in some way. And with CrossFit and Jiu-Jitsu, there is the potential, right? Depending on how you train your Jiu-Jitsu. So my recommendation is, if you're doing CrossFit to stay in shape, then your Jiu-Jitsu shouldn't be as intense, right? You don't want to do CrossFit on Monday and then go do Jiu-Jitsu and start developing overuse injuries, right? So you're going to need to do Jiu-Jitsu in a way that isn't as intense as the CrossFit that you do, because you don't want to get injured. If you're doing Jiu-Jitsu primarily as a method of physical fitness, then you should back down on the CrossFit a little bit. And this is just to give your body time to rest and recover, which is an extremely important part of a physical fitness regimen. If you've never done it, you can go PROVRBS, Proverbs: progression, regularity, overload, variety, balance, BR, rest, and specificity. All these things are important in an exercise prescription. But that rest is extremely important. Otherwise, you get overuse injuries, your shoulders start to hurt, your knees, whatever, and you don't keep doing either of the things you love. Now, in terms of balancing Jiu-Jitsu and whatever else, it comes down to deciding what you really like, what you want to do. If you're doing Jiu-Jitsu for self-defense, or just as a general hobby, my personal opinion, 2 days a week is plenty. 2 classes per week and you're done. If you're doing it as, maybe you want to do it as a sport, and you want to compete, 3-4 days a week is going to get you there. And if you're really, really into it and trying to stay in shape with it and all this kind of stuff, then you probably want 4 or 5 days a week. However, that's not always possible, right? So you probably have family. You probably have some other things that family's doing, right? Like if you have kids, your kids are in sports or whatever, you gotta manage that. You've got work, you've got all this stuff. So my best recommendation is this: look at what you have and what your goals are. Write them down. Don't just think about it. Write it down. What is my goal for CrossFit? What is my goal with Jiu-Jitsu? What barriers do I have to entry of doing those every day? Okay, family, sports, injury. These are all barriers that keep you from doing both of those things every single day. Work commitments. Then say, okay, if I'm doing CrossFit for the purpose of getting in shape, I don't need to do Jiu-Jitsu as much, and I don't need to do it at the level of intensity. 2 days a week is probably fine. If I'm doing Jiu-Jitsu as a primary mode of also staying in shape, I can probably back down on the CrossFit. Do CrossFit twice a week, Jiu-Jitsu 3 days a week. If I'm doing Jiu-Jitsu as a sport and I want to compete in this, you definitely don't need to be doing CrossFit as much. You do CrossFit 2 days a week. 2 days a week is fine for a strength and conditioning program, by the way. I'm an exercise physiologist as well, so I'm telling you 2 days a week is fine. If you're just trying to balance a couple hobbies that you like, so you do CrossFit because you like it and it keeps you in shape, you do Jiu-Jitsu because you like it and it keeps you in shape, 2 days a week of Jiu-Jitsu is fine. Do 2 days a week of Jiu-Jitsu, 2 days a week of CrossFit, and spend the rest of the time with your family. Or 3 days a week of CrossFit, whatever. And then my last piece of advice is, if you're trying to balance family in there, see how you can get family involved as well. Take your family with you to CrossFit. Spend that time together. Take your family with you to Jiu-Jitsu. Do Jiu-Jitsu, have your kids do the kids classes. You and your wife do the adult class while the kids sit there and color or whatever. So these are ways that you can come up with to balance that difficult, it's difficult, there's no doubt. But that's how you can kind of develop a balance. But the more you write it down and write down a schedule, the more things will quickly become apparent to you how you have to balance it. So I hope this has been helpful to you and anybody who's listening, and whether your hobby might be train building or Dungeons and Dragons, like I said, but you've got to write that down and see, where does this fit? How many hours a week do I want to do this? The minimum I would say in jiu-jitsu to get good is 2. So make sure that you're doing at least 2 days a week, 2 classes per week. And in my opinion, like, once you've been training for a while and when it comes time to start rolling, you only need to roll 1 day a week. You don't need to roll every time. 1 day a week is fine. So even if you're going to 3 classes per week and you roll for 20 minutes or half an hour after one of those classes, or during, depending on how it's structured, you're doing good. You're doing fine. You're going to get good. I've never met anybody who did jiu-jitsu for 10 years and wasn't good. Never met them. So anyway, guys, I hope you find this helpful. If there's any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.